The story begins with a seemingly ordinary family gathering in a grand, opulent living room adorned with sparkling chandeliers and luxurious furniture. The protagonist, a kind-hearted and determined woman named Mia, sits quietly in the corner, feeling slightly out of place. Her husband, James, the supportive and loving man who has always been her rock, is by her side. His family, wealthy and accustomed to the finer things in life, are gathered around a large television screen, chuckling and exchanging amused remarks. On the screen is a short video of a small bakery, Mia's Bakery. The footage, taken by a passerby during a quiet weekday afternoon, shows the cozy yet humble shop with just a couple of customers browsing the shelves of fresh bread and pastries. The laughter in the room grows louder as James's sister, a sharp-tongued woman named Charlotte, makes a snide comment about how quaint the place looks, adding, "Who even eats there? It's so unremarkable." Mia forces a smile, her heart sinking slightly. She doesn't want to reveal her hurt, especially not in front of the family that has always judged her for her modest background and independent spirit. She has poured her heart and soul into that bakery, creating recipes that bring joy to her loyal customers. But it isn't just about the bakery. Mia has another secret, a secret that none of them, except James, knows. What the family doesn't realize as they laugh at the video is that Mia is not just a struggling bakery owner. She is also the secret owner of one of the most acclaimed fine dining restaurants in the city, a place they all adore. In fact, they often boast about their exquisite experiences there, never imagining that the woman they look down on is the mastermind behind the establishment. Mia's decision to keep her restaurant ownership a secret wasn't out of shame, but pride. She wanted to build her bakery from the ground up, proving her abilities without the shadow of her restaurant's success. Yet, sitting there, listening to the derision, a flicker of resolve burns brighter within her. Let them laugh for now, she thinks. One day, the truth will turn their scorn into stunned silence. The scene sets the stage for a story of resilience, hidden identities, and the eventual unraveling of deeply held misconceptions. Mia's Bakery wasn't just a business to her, it was her dream come to life. Ever since she was a child, she had found solace in the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread and the joy of experimenting with recipes in her grandmother's tiny kitchen. Baking was her passion, her creative outlet, and the way she connected with people. So when she married James, she decided to pursue her dream of opening a bakery, even though she knew his wealthy family might scoff at the idea. James's family was all about appearances, status, success, and the symbols of wealth. For them, a modest bakery didn't fit the mold of what they considered an appropriate endeavor. But Mia didn't care about their approval. She wanted to build something that was entirely hers. She envisioned a place where she could create treats that brought smiles to people's faces, no matter how simple or extravagant their tastes were. What no one knew, except for James, was that Mia wasn't just the owner of a small bakery. She also owned one of the city's most celebrated fine dining restaurants, a glamorous establishment adored by critics and frequented by the wealthy elite. The restaurant had been a part of Mia's life for years, and its success was undeniable. But she had always kept her involvement a secret, even from James's family. Mia had her reasons for hiding the truth. The restaurant, while profitable and prestigious, didn't feel like it fully belonged to her. She had inherited it from a mentor who believed in her talent and entrusted her with the business. Though she managed it brilliantly, she had always felt that it carried the weight of someone else's legacy. The bakery, on the other hand, was hers from the ground up. Every decision, from the name on the sign to the recipes in the display case, was hers alone. It was her way of proving to herself, and, in a way, to the world, that she could succeed on her own terms. But running both businesses came with challenges. Mia spent her mornings in the bakery, kneading dough and greeting customers, and her evenings overseeing the restaurant's operations, always careful to keep the two worlds separate. She didn't want her bakery's success to be overshadowed by her restaurant's reputation. She wanted to show that small dreams mattered just as much as big ones. For Mia, the bakery wasn't just a business. It was her statement of independence, her way of carving out a place in the world without relying on anyone else's wealth or influence. It was her heart, her soul, and the embodiment of everything she stood for. James had always admired Mia's strength and determination. From the moment they met, he saw in her a quiet confidence and an unshakable belief in her dreams. It was one of the many reasons he fell in love with her. Over the years, their bond had grown stronger, built on mutual respect and unwavering support for one another. When Mia confided in him about her dream of opening a bakery, James didn't hesitate for a moment. He knew it was unconventional, especially given the expectations of his family, who valued corporate success and wealth above all else. But James wasn't like them. He saw the spark in Mia's eyes when she spoke about her plans, and he vowed to stand by her no matter what. He also knew her secret, the one she had kept from everyone except him. James was proud of Mia's success with the fine dining restaurant, but he understood why she chose to keep her ownership hidden. It wasn't about deceit. It was about proving to herself that she could build something on her own without relying on the reputation of the restaurant or his family's wealth. James admired her even more for that. Still, it wasn't always easy for him. His family's condescending remarks about Mia's bakery stung, not just because they insulted her, but because they showed how little they understood or appreciated the woman he loved. He wanted to defend her, to shout from the rooftops about her incredible accomplishments, but he respected her wishes to keep things quiet. At family gatherings, James found himself caught between two worlds. On one hand, he wanted to protect Mia from the sharp barbs of his relatives, especially his sister Charlotte, whose cutting words often left Mia feeling small. On the other hand, he didn't want to alienate his family entirely. He walked a delicate tightrope, speaking up for Mia when he could, but also biting his tongue to avoid escalating tensions. Despite the challenges, James never wavered in his loyalty to Mia. He was her sounding board, her confidant, and her greatest cheerleader. Late at night, when she doubted herself or worried about the bakery's slow days, he reminded her of how far she had come and how proud he was of her courage. James knew that his family's approval didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What mattered was the life he and Mia were building together, founded on love, respect, and the shared understanding that true success wasn't measured by wealth, but by the passion and purpose they brought to their dreams. Mia had always felt the weight of the unspoken judgment from James's family. From the moment she married into their world of sprawling estates and designer clothes, she knew she didn't fit their mold. The Bennetts, as they liked to remind everyone, were a family of legacy, proud of their wealth, their accomplishments, and their place in high society. To them, Mia's modest background and simple dreams were almost laughable. The disdain was subtle at times, a barely veiled remark or a dismissive glance. But no one made their disapproval more obvious than Charlotte, James's older sister. Charlotte had a knack for finding Mia's soft spots and prodding them with precision. At family dinners, she would flash a polite smile and ask questions that sounded innocent but carried a sting. "How's that little bakery of yours?" she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. "Still keeping busy? I imagine it must be hard competing with the bigger chains." Charlotte's words always found their mark, and Mia would feel her confidence falter, even though she knew better than to take them to heart. Charlotte was everything the Bennetts valued: polished, ambitious, and deeply rooted in their circle of privilege. She worked in high finance and carried herself with an air of superiority that left little room for empathy or understanding. To Charlotte, Mia's choice to run a small bakery was incomprehensible, even embarrassing. She would often point out how lucky Mia was to have married James, implying that without him, Mia wouldn't have the same opportunities. And though Charlotte adored the restaurant Mia secretly owned, she was blissfully unaware of its true owner. "Now that is a place worth talking about," she'd say. "Such impeccable taste, the kind of establishment this family can proudly associate with." The rest of the family wasn't much better. While James's parents were less vocal, their indifference spoke volumes. They rarely asked Mia about her work, focusing instead on James's career or the achievements of other family members. To them, Mia's bakery was a quaint hobby, not a real endeavor. Despite the constant slights, Mia maintained her composure. She knew their disdain came from their narrow view of success, one defined by wealth and appearances. She reminded herself that her worth wasn't tied to their opinions, but it wasn't easy. Each family gathering felt like a battle, with Mia silently defending herself against their judgment while keeping her biggest secret hidden. In their world, Mia was an outsider, a woman with a dream they couldn't understand, but she held her head high, knowing that one day they would see her for who she truly was. One crisp autumn morning, Mia found an elegant envelope slipped under the door of her bakery. The paper was thick and embossed with golden lettering, exuding an air of importance. She opened it with curiosity, her heart skipping a beat as she read the contents. It was an invitation to the annual Culinary Excellence Gala, one of the most prestigious events in the culinary world. Her bakery, Sweet Haven, had been nominated for an award in the Community Delight category, recognizing establishments that brought joy and comfort through their craft. For a moment, Mia stared at the letter in disbelief. Her modest bakery, which she had poured her heart and soul into, was being recognized on a stage she never thought possible. Pride swelled in her chest as she thought of her journey, the early mornings, the late nights, and the endless dedication. This was her validation, proof that her work mattered. But as she read further, her emotions grew more complicated. Listed among the other nominees was none other than her restaurant, Lumière, competing in the Culinary Innovation category. The thought of the two worlds she had carefully kept apart, colliding, sent a ripple of anxiety through her. She imagined the Bennets attending the gala, as they often did, reveling in the prestige of the restaurant they adored. They had no idea she was the woman behind both Sweet Haven and Lumière. When Mia told James about the nomination that evening, he was ecstatic. "You deserve this," he said, pulling her into a warm embrace. "Both of your creations are incredible, and now the world gets to see that too." His words reassured her, but the thought of navigating the event left her uneasy. The Bennets, of course, received their own invitation to the gala. It was an event they looked forward to each year, a chance to mingle with other affluent guests and discuss the latest culinary trends. When they saw Lumière on the list, their excitement was palpable. "The best restaurant in the city, without a doubt," Charlotte declared, flipping her hair. "I hope it wins." They barely glanced at the bakery's nomination, dismissing it as irrelevant. "Oh, isn't that cute?" Charlotte said with a laugh. "I'm sure it's a lovely little place." Mia couldn't help but smile to herself, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness stirring within her. The stage was set for an unforgettable evening, where secrets would teeter on the edge of revelation, and the lines between perception and reality would blur in the most unexpected ways. The days leading up to the gala were a whirlwind for Mia. Between running the bakery and overseeing preparations at Lumière, she found herself navigating the delicate balance of her dual roles. It wasn't unusual for her to juggle responsibilities, but with both establishments in the spotlight, keeping her secret felt more challenging than ever. The first hint of trouble came during a routine delivery to the bakery. The delivery driver, a young man who also made rounds to Lumière, looked at Mia with a flicker of recognition. "You seem familiar," he said, narrowing his eyes. "Do you ever work at Lumière? I could have sworn I've seen you there." Mia's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly offered a casual laugh. "Oh, I visit sometimes," she said, brushing it off. "It's one of my favorite places to eat." While her tone was light, the encounter left her uneasy, a small crack forming in the wall she had carefully built between her two worlds. A few days later, as she stepped into the gala venue to finalize seating arrangements, the event organizer greeted her warmly. "Mia, so wonderful to see you again. I must say, Lumière is always the highlight of these events. Your team's attention to detail is unmatched." Mia hesitated for a split second, caught off guard by the familiarity. "Thank you," she replied, her smile polite but guarded. She couldn't shake the feeling that the organizer had unknowingly revealed more than intended, hinting at her deeper connection to the restaurant. The most unnerving moment came during a casual meeting with one of Lumière's head chefs, who was going over their menu for the gala. As they discussed plating and presentation, the chef paused and glanced at her thoughtfully. "You know, Mia, you always have this way of knowing what works. Even when you don't say much, I can tell this place reflects your vision. It's uncanny." Mia's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression steady. "That's very kind of you," she said softly, deflecting the comment. But the chef's words lingered in her mind, a reminder that her presence, though quiet, was deeply woven into the fabric of Lumière. Each of these moments felt like pieces of a puzzle falling into place, small, almost insignificant interactions that hinted at a bigger picture. Mia knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. As the gala approached, the suspense grew, the weight of her secret pressing heavier on her shoulders. James had always prided himself on being the bridge between Mia and his family. He loved them both deeply. Though he often felt caught in the middle of two very different worlds, Mia, with her quiet strength and unwavering determination, had won his heart completely. She was everything he admired, independent, talented, and fiercely driven. But his family, rooted in their traditions of wealth and social status, struggled to see her for who she truly was. The tension was always there, simmering beneath the surface at family gatherings. It wasn't just the dismissive comments about Mia's bakery or the veiled remarks about her modest background. It was the unspoken judgment that lingered in the room, the way his sister Charlotte would smirk or his parents would subtly steer conversations away from anything related to Mia's work. James often found himself biting his tongue, trying to maintain peace. But as the years went on, the weight of their condescension began to take its toll. It wasn't just about protecting Mia anymore, it was about standing up for the woman he loved and the life they were building together. The strain became more pronounced after the gala invitation arrived. During a family dinner, Charlotte wasted no time ridiculing the bakery's nomination. "It's sweet, really," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I suppose even small places need their moment in the spotlight." James felt his jaw tighten. He had heard enough. "You know, Charlotte," he said, his voice calm but firm, "it takes a lot more courage to build something from the ground up than to sit on the sidelines and criticize." Charlotte's eyes widened, clearly not expecting his rebuttal. "I didn't mean anything by it," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Their parents quickly tried to smooth things over, but James wasn't done. "Mia works harder than anyone I know. Maybe instead of dismissing her achievements, you could try appreciating them." The room fell silent, the air heavy with unspoken tension. For James, it was a turning point. He realized that his loyalty to Mia wasn't just about defending her, it was about challenging the narrow views of his family and forcing them to see beyond their superficial values. Yet, standing up for Mia came with its own challenges. The more he pushed back, the more strained his relationship with his family became. He hated the growing rift, but he knew where his priorities lay. Mia was his partner, his equal, and the person who made his life richer in ways his family couldn't understand. and if keeping her secret meant clashing with his family, then so be it. Mia sat alone in the quiet of her bakery after closing time, the hum of the refrigerators the only sound in the room. The day had been a whirlwind of preparations for the gala, and while she should have felt a sense of accomplishment, she was instead consumed by a gnawing unease. The invitation that had once filled her with pride now seemed like a harbinger of inevitable chaos. She stared at the shelves of freshly baked goods, her hands absently resting on the counter. The bakery was her sanctuary, the place where her dreams had taken shape. But now, with her secret on the verge of exposure, Mia found herself questioning everything. Was it a mistake to keep her ownership of Lumière hidden for so long? When she first decided to separate the two ventures, it had felt like the right choice. She wanted Sweet Haven to succeed on its own merits, not as an extension of a high-end restaurant. The bakery was her passion project, a reflection of her heart and her roots. Yet, as the gala loomed closer, she began to fear the consequences of her secrecy. What would James's family think? They had spent years belittling her efforts, dismissing her bakery as insignificant. The thought of their reactions when they discovered she was the owner of the restaurant they so admired filled her with dread. Would they accuse her of deception or worse, see her as someone who had manipulated their ignorance for her gain? And what about James? While he had always supported her unconditionally, Mia worried about the strain this revelation might put on him. He was already caught between her and his family, defending her against their judgments while trying to maintain peace. Would her secret make his position even more difficult? Mia's thoughts spiraled as she considered the broader implications. Would her customers at Sweet Haven see her differently? Would the restaurant's patrons question her integrity? She had worked so hard to build her reputation as a baker and a businesswoman, but now it felt as though everything she had achieved was precariously balanced on a single truth. For the first time, Mia felt the weight of self-doubt pressing down on her. She had always believed in her ability to navigate challenges, but this was different. This wasn't just about business, it was about trust, identity, and the relationships she held dear. As she turned off the lights and locked the door, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed world was on the brink of unraveling. The gala glittered with elegance, the grand ballroom filled with the hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and the murmur of admiration for the culinary artistry on display. Mia stood at the edge of the room, her heart pounding as she watched James's family mingle effortlessly among the crowd. Their conversations were lively, their smiles wide, and their praise for Lumière unabashed. Charlotte, as always, was at the center of attention, dressed to perfection and armed with sharp opinions. She spoke animatedly to a group of guests about the nominees. "Oh, Lumière is just divine," she gushed, her voice carrying over the room. "Their menu is perfection. Every dish is an experience. It's no wonder they're nominated. It's a place of true sophistication." Mia couldn't help but feel a bitter twist of irony. The same people who dismissed her bakery as a quaint hobby were now pouring out adoration for a restaurant that she had poured just as much of her heart into. They loved Lumière for its exclusivity, for its polished presentation, for the way it made them feel like part of an elite circle. But they had no idea that the passion and dedication behind it came from the same woman they looked down upon. James, standing beside Mia, caught her uneasy expression. He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, his silent way of saying, "I'm here for you." He too had heard his family's endless praise for the restaurant. While it didn't surprise him, it did frustrate him. Their admiration was so transparently tied to the restaurant's prestige, not the soul behind it. The hypocrisy reached its peak when Charlotte turned to their parents and declared, "This is exactly the kind of establishment that embodies the Bennett legacy, excellence, sophistication, and class." Mia's stomach churned at the words. They had spent years undermining her dreams, refusing to see value in her work because it didn't align with their narrow definition of success. Yet here they were, celebrating a business they thought was owned by someone worthy of their respect. As the evening unfolded, Mia couldn't help but feel a surge of resolve. She had spent so long doubting herself, fearing their reactions and judgments. But now, as she watched their shallow adoration, she realized how little their opinions truly mattered. The family's praise wasn't about understanding the effort, creativity, or passion that went into Lumière. It was about their love for status and appearances. And soon, they would learn that the woman they had dismissed was the very person behind everything they idolized. The air in the grand ballroom seemed to still as the host stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, ready to announce the winners of the night's prestigious awards. Mia stood near the back, her heart pounding in anticipation. She wasn't sure what she feared more, the announcement or what might happen afterward. James was by her side, his presence steady and reassuring. He'd urged her to let the evening unfold naturally, but Mia knew that no matter how it played out, the truth was bound to come out tonight. When the host announced the winner for the Community Delight category, a wave of emotions washed over Mia as her bakery, Sweet Haven, was named. She hadn't expected to win, and the applause that filled the room felt both surreal and overwhelming. Slowly, she made her way to the stage, her heart heavy with a mix of pride and apprehension. After her brief acceptance speech, the ceremony continued, and the moment she had been dreading arrived. The award for culinary innovation went to Lumière. The Bennets erupted into cheers, Charlotte clapping the loudest of all. "I knew it," she exclaimed to anyone who would listen. "It's the best in the city, no question." But as the restaurant's name was announced, whispers rippled through the crowd. The organizer, a gleam of curiosity in his eyes, called Mia back to the stage. "It seems we have a unique situation tonight," he said, his voice laced with intrigue. "Sweet Haven and Lumière share not just excellence, but also a visionary owner. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Mia Bennett, the creative force behind both establishments." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of Charlotte's glass hitting the table in shock. All eyes turned to Mia as she stood frozen under the spotlight. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, as applause began to grow, she felt the weight of years of secrecy lift from her shoulders. Mia stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady. "I've kept this part of my life private, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted both places to stand on their own merits. What they share is my passion for creating spaces where people feel welcome, whether through a simple loaf of bread or an innovative dining experience." Her gaze swept across the room, pausing on the Bennets. "I've worked hard to build these dreams, even when some people didn't believe in me. Tonight, I hope that effort speaks louder than words." The applause was thunderous, but the Bennets' faces were a mix of astonishment and discomfort. In that moment, Mia felt both triumph and vulnerability. But most of all, she felt free. The aftermath of Mia's revelation rippled through the Bennett family like a stone dropped into still water. As the gala concluded and the family gathered in the lounge of their sprawling estate, the room buzzed with tension. No one quite knew what to say, and for once, even Charlotte seemed at a loss for words. James stood protectively beside Mia, his hand resting gently on her back, as if to shield her from the onslaught he knew was coming. His father, Charles Bennett, was the first to break the silence. Clearing his throat, he looked at Mia with a hesitant expression. "I must admit," he began, his tone cautious, "I had no idea you were capable of such accomplishments. It's impressive." Though the words were meant as a compliment, they carried an edge of surprise that stung more than Mia expected. She forced a polite smile, unwilling to let his lukewarm praise diminish the pride she felt in her work. James's mother, Eleanor, was more candid. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and reproach. "You've been part of this family for years, yet we had no idea you were the owner of Lumière. Did you think we wouldn't understand?" Mia met her gaze calmly. "It wasn't about hiding it from you," she said. "I wanted to succeed on my own terms without being judged or compared. I didn't want my achievements tied to this family's name or wealth. I wanted them to stand on their own." Eleanor nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding crossing her face. But before she could respond, Charlotte's sharp voice cut through the air. "Well, isn't this convenient?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You get to play the underdog while secretly running a high-end restaurant. Do you enjoy making us look like fools?" James bristled. "That's enough, Charlotte," he said firmly. "This isn't about you. Mia's worked harder than any of us can imagine, and she doesn't owe you or anyone an explanation." Charlotte's eyes flashed with anger, but she said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. It was clear that jealousy had taken root, and her resentment was far from over. Meanwhile, Charles and Eleanor exchanged uneasy glances. They were clearly grappling with a mix of embarrassment and regret, realizing how their dismissive attitudes had underestimated Mia's strength and talent. For Mia, the fallout was bittersweet. While some family members seemed willing to reflect and grow, others, like Charlotte, clung to their arrogance. But as she walked away that evening, hand in hand with James, she felt a quiet triumph. She had stood her ground, revealed her truth, and reclaimed her narrative. Whatever the Bennets chose to do with that truth was their burden to bear, not hers. Months had passed since the gala, and while things were still a little tense between Mia and the Bennets, there was a palpable shift in the air. The truth had been revealed, and though it had rattled the family, it had also begun to carve out a space for Mia to stand unapologetically in her success. Her bakery, Sweet Haven, had flourished beyond expectations. The recognition from the gala had brought a wave of new customers, and word of mouth was working in her favor. The community that had embraced her from the start continued to support her with loyalty, appreciating the heart and soul she poured into every loaf of bread and pastry. Mia often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. How much she had doubted herself, how often she had hidden her true accomplishments, afraid of being judged for her ambition. But now, as she stood behind the counter of her thriving bakery, those fears seemed distant. She had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she ever gave herself credit for. James had been her rock throughout it all. His unwavering support had not only helped her through the hardest moments, but also empowered her to embrace her accomplishments. He stood beside her with pride, never backing down when it came to defending her, whether it was from his family's condescension or the quiet whispers of doubt that occasionally crept into her mind. Their relationship had deepened, rooted in a respect that went beyond love. Mia knew she could face anything with him by her side. As for the Bennets, there had been a slow but steady shift in the dynamics. Charlotte's bitterness hadn't completely subsided, but even she couldn't ignore the undeniable success that Mia had created. Charles and Eleanor, while still adjusting to the idea of Mia's independence, had begun to offer her a form of respect they had never shown before. They didn't fully understand her drive, but they couldn't deny it. They were learning, albeit slowly, to appreciate her for more than just her connection to their family name. At family gatherings, Mia no longer felt the need to shrink into the background. She had earned her place at the table, not because of her marriage, not because of her wealth, but because of her sheer determination and grit. Sweet Haven continued to thrive, its shelves always filled with warm, inviting aromas. The customers, from young professionals to retirees, shared stories over coffee, delighting in the simple joy of good food made with love. Mia knew this was only the beginning. Her success wasn't defined by the shallow judgments of others. It was defined by her unwavering passion, her commitment to excellence, and the belief that when you follow your heart, no dream is too big. And as she glanced over at James, his eyes full of pride, Mia knew that the most important victory was the one they'd won together.